Good afternoon. This is Max Quinn, and today I'm going to go over a demo of Einstein for the BP risk assessment tool. So this is the home page for the risk assessment application, and I'm going to go into Analytics Studio where we can view Einstein and its assets. So I click into Analytics Studio, and this is where all the analytics assets live. This is where we make edits, this is where we create models, and this is where we create dashboard visualizations and make changes to them. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to a model that we built using Einstein Discovery. Einstein Discovery is a tool that's used to use machine learning models to optimize a given metric. So here we wanted to minimize risk severity, or maximize risk severity no. We input a lot of data here, and Einstein behind the scenes takes the data of all the records that come in and determines the correlations between different variables that may optimize risk severity no or not optimize it. So given on the data that we analyze, we see that temperature explains 16.8% of the variation. So that's a very high variable. And we also see that other variables, such as the checklist minimum frequency, the number of times per year, also has an impact on how it relates to other variables like temperature. As we scroll down, we continue to see how different barriers and safeguards impact risk severity, given on the data that we analyzed. So we see well age also had an impact, and as we scroll down, we continue to see different statistics using machine learning based off of the data that we input. We also see that Einstein makes recommendations on how to improve the model. So if we were to run another iteration on this model, we can accept or reject some of these metrics. We can also view why it happened. So this dives even deeper into some of the analytics, as well as what could happen, depending on what we select. If we dive deeper, we're given all the tools that data scientists and data analysts would expect with a tool like this. So we can see a confusion matrix, we can see an ROC curve, we can see gains and lift charts to analyze how our model is performing, as well as different performance metrics, and also the correlations for the different variables and how it showed up in our model. So Einstein provides a variety of tools out of the box that allows us to quickly iterate and improve models to optimize a given metric. Now, that was the view of the data analyst or data scientist that would be creating the model so that other users can use it. So now if we dive back into the risk assessment tool, I created an application, I just called it Einstein, with risk severity records. So remember, the model predicted and optimized risk severity no. So if we dive into a risk severity record that the model was trained on, Einstein will now make new predictions to determine how risk severity performs. So for this risk severity record, we see that it's predicting 87.52, and we see some of the factors that contribute to why this score is what it is. So we see that temperature is cold, and this drawbacks operations limits. Safeguard is no. So the score is 87 right now. If we were to go in and change some of these, let's say we change this to hot. We see that the score increased from 80s to 90s. So the model is trained on the back end, and it creates new new numbers off of the variables that appear as they change. Let's also take a look at checklist minimum frequency. If I was to change that to 2, for example, we see that the model updates again and changes the score to reflect that. Also, oftentimes, depending on the variable selection, Einstein will also make recommendations on actionable variables that we can take to improve or lower the risk severity metric. We also see on this record that we have water level is high. Now, because water level is high, Einstein Next Best Action, which is another feature of the Einstein platform, is telling us, hey, we might want to send a truck to pump off the water because of this variable. So Einstein on the back end is looking at all the data, and depending on some of the business strategies we specify, it might recommend some different strategies. Now, it's picking that up because the water level is high. If we were to change it to, let's say, low, we see that that recommendation goes away. It's appearing because of the data that's in here. So just going back and changing it back to high so the recommendation appears again, we see that we can accept this record, accept this recommendation. So if I click accept, I accepted the recommendation, which auto launches a flow that can then be executed. So this can involve any different number of actions that we might want to take. In this case, it's sending a pump truck to pump the well. And we can even integrate with other systems to recommend things like vendors that might be best depending on the location and the cost. So I can click yes, and this will auto-generate a workflow that we define to take that action into account. So this is the view of the average user, and we can see how the modeling on the back end integrates with the front end view that the user is using. Now, diving back into the Einstein Analytics Studio, we also created data visualization. So Einstein's a tool that can access up to billions of records, and we can create dashboards or visualizations that might be useful. So here we see RE per region, average of derived risk score, just different visualizations on data that might be useful. We can also take different actions off of these visualizations. For example, I can post this, I can export it, I can download it, I can share it. So there are several different ways that I can share this data with users in the system. Finally, again, this is the view that would be given to the person setting up the dashboards, but these dashboards can also be embedded directly into workflows. So if we go back to our Einstein application, we can embed these dashboards directly into tabs within the application. We can embed them onto record pages, and we can do a variety of different things. For example, if we were filling out a checklist, it might be useful to view what are the top 10 causes and top 10 preventions. That might help us suggest different actions and different words we might want to type when filling out a risk assessment record. So this demo covered a variety of different parts of the Einstein platform. It talked about Einstein Discovery, which uses predictive AI and machine learning models to optimize given metrics depending on data that can be residing either in Salesforce, outside of Salesforce, or in integration from a variety of different systems. We also talked about Einstein Next Best Action, which takes business-defined strategies integrated with data within the application to surface up recommendations and workflows that can be taken directly from the record. And we also looked at data visualizations that can be embedded directly within the application. So that concludes the demo. Thank you.